All right, thank you so much, Susan Woodford, for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit about your show?
Absolutely. A lot of the, like we were talking about, the nonverbal translations of this show is post-pandemic societal norms. So I have this glockenspiel piece that is really kind of a diatribe on how we as a American society have started to impose our ideas, our anchors, all of these emotions upon one another. And so the audience can actually pick up mallets and play on this form. These butterflies are coming up and releasing from her as she's outstretched to the heavens as a release of that energy is almost in a prayer and this metaphysical belief, spiritual belief that prayer can transmute and transform and turn all of this sadness, rage, cruelty into a blessing.
That is beautiful. So you have the glockenspiel? Apologize. What made you decide to put that of all pieces on the figure? Typically, when you see sculptures like this, you see it next to the figure or somewhere where the audience is invited to play and interact, but not actually touching the sculpture, let alone her abdomen, her right around her middle. Very sensitive. It's not like it's separated from her. It is very much a part of her.
Because we are very centered with our purposes here on Earth and being spiritual creatures. Words have such an impact that, of course, her core would be impacted by these societal playing put on her. I chose the glockenspiel. Actually, I want to say that was my first experience with, I want to say, like, discrimination, sexual discrimination. So I played the percussion instruments in the band for many, many years. Started in elementary school, as we all do.
Of course.
When I was winning state competitions on the snare drum or with a drum set, in the school band, I was taught the glockenspiel and other instruments that as a female I should go to, and my male counterparts should really be learning the drums in the symphony orchestra so that as their careers evolve, they can have a higher standing. And even though I was winning, like I was saying, state and national awards, I was really pushed onto, okay, these are more the feminine instruments and get out of the men's way.
Wow. That is baffling and in grade school level. So being able to incorporate those here, I would have to bring that back to focus, those negative emotions and that pain.
You know what? At the time and even now, I don't think it's a negative emotion towards it at all. I really did have wonderful relationships with my orchestra leaders, the band instructors, and I think it was a self-preservation and a preservation for the students. You know, that is a societal norm. In the orchestra band, girls shouldn't be on this instrument. Yeah. You know, you should be over here. And I think it was done out of love. But I just think that we have this institutionalized discrimination that we may not always be looking at or thinking about. And there doesn't have to be a negative connotation about it, but it also doesn't need to perpetuate.
Absolutely. Looking at this, you have a lot of beautiful figures and forms, playing with the female form and playing with puzzle pieces and butterflies. Beautiful, delicate, and very elevated forms. What drew you to these forms? Why?
Oh, thank you. A lot of my work is extremely spiritual, and being able to depict God in everyday life is very important to my story and vocabulary, and a lot of sculpture, and the metamorphosis of the butterfly, I think, really speaks to God's ability to transform negative things in this world into his message, by his grace, it can be transformed. The whole changing ourselves and by releasing puzzle pieces or labels placed upon us by society during our domestication process, and either agreeing with or discarding what we've been told we are. I think changing and transitioning is a huge part of my entire portfolio. Yeah.
That's beautiful, beautifully put, and absolutely gorgeously represented. Have you always worked with metalworking, with welding and casting forms?
I emphasized in mold sculpture in college. Yes. I worked under David Helm in 3D arts, and he was such an amazing professor. He really encouraged me to get into sculpture, and my godfather had taught me many years before that how to weld, spending the summer with him. Obviously, I needed to undergo a lot more training afterwards to incorporate the two, but the smell, the feel of metal kind of brings back those wonderful summer memories with my godfather, whom I love so much. And sculpture, although I did not have a 3D mind, and it really took me a long time to transition and learn to that, it's definitely become one of the greatest joys of my life.
So you say having a 3D mind. What is your process that you take? How do you think three-dimensionally and overcome? A lot of us see pictures and ideas in a flat two-dimensional surface, but being able to break that and pull that apart into fully in the round. What does your process look like?
Susan, you teach like figure drawing, life drawing.
Yes.
And that was one of my passions to begin with. So honestly, I was taking wire for a long time and trying to translate that two-dimensional drawing into a 3-dimension. So that is, the origin story of these pieces. It was hard for me to take clay and get all the proportions correct that we're so used to doing in a two-dimensional space. So actually literally taking this two-dimensional wire and pulling it out was how I slowly over years trained my brain to work in that method.
That is amazing, thinking of the wire as line and being able to take that line and create form. It's incredible. Beautiful.
Or very backwards. I don't know.
It works. Obviously, it works. Speaking of your works, though, you mentioned earlier about the puzzles and the puzzle pieces. And the series you have in the back is titled Armor?
Yes, the Armor series. The bust is an armor. The entire series is called Pieces of Me.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Pieces of Me? In the back, you have all of these absolutely gorgeous little puzzle pieces that are cut out and carved. Why are the figures made of these puzzle pieces? I feel like in the security of our own home, that's different.
Yes. So the puzzle pieces are depictions of labels placed upon us during our domestication process. This whole belief that every single day we have the right to agree or disagree, to discard or to hold very dear what these labels are, and what these words mean to us. Again, the glockenspiel, playing on her words, being very, very powerful. So pieces of me, usually with every individual composition, I try to leave out large parts of this form to really show a changing process. With sitting with myself in the back here at the gallery, and there are mirrored puzzle pieces all over the floor that are supposed to almost emulate the water that she and all these lily pads are sitting on. And every single one of the puzzle pieces has a word inscribed on it, either something beautiful that I would hope a person would feel as their authentic self and want to take home with them and keep, or something negative, false, something that I hope with all my heart someone would destroy, burn, bury, and realize that they never were and never are that. And so I invite the audience member to please pick up these puzzle pieces, take one or more home, and involve this ritual within their heart and their life.
That is beautiful. That is so uncommon. You don't go into a gallery and take the art. Only here. That is absolutely amazing.
Touch the sculpture here.
Oh my goodness. Speaking of the work in the back, all the lilies, you have lilies and butterflies, but especially the lilies in the back. What are those about? Why lilies?
The lily pads are still a little bit of a, I want to say a subconscious blank there between me and why that is so important this past year. I understand the transformative. I understand the seventh chakra, the opening of the lotus, 4 different layers really symbolize self all the way down to community. And in many cultures, there's an overwhelming amount of symbolism that it's rather new. I've only been working with the lotus for a few months, 6 months. So our journey, our relationship is just beginning.
That is amazing. I am very excited. Seeing this new work is beautiful. Almost all of this work is 2021 made. Where did you find the time? How did you make a whole show? And this is only the 4th month, 5th month, 4th month.
I had 5 weeks. And thank you so much for bringing up this point, because I think this is very, very important for non-artists to understand, or students who are emerging into the arts field and about to go out there. Our deadlines are crazy. You know?
Yes.
And it's one after another after another. You're booked out a year. Sculpture, you need to be booked out a year. Give yourself as much time as you may think, and everything has to keep moving. There's very little sleep. Sculpture just takes a lot of time to build. So, you know, especially anyone who's emerging, you're a bookkeeper, you're the designer, you're the fabricator, you're the scheduler, you're all these things. And so maintaining that emotional, physical, spiritual, mental health and listening to yourself in the scheduling process is super, super important. I joke that I have fights with my scheduler quite a bit. My designer and my scheduler just don't want to get along. Something this big turns into this big, and my passionate sculptor side is saying, yes, do it. And then, you know, my scheduler is like, wow, you can't sleep till May.
That is hilarious and accurate. Very, very accurate. Absolutely amazing that you were able to manage all of this.
Thank you.
What does your construction look like? How? I understand, like, very basic level, you can weld objects together. but what is your process of constructing these works look like? You have these incredible human forms. You have these beautifully cut butterflies. What does that look like?
Well, thank you, Susan. What you are teaching right now with the intro to 3D is very, very important. And I hope your students are aware that's where a lot of artists start, with cardboard, with plexiglass, with paper. Everything starts off as a drawing. It's still two-dimensional. From the drawing, I either go into a computer program, a CAD program, or I go into the cardboard. That really depends on it. Is it going to a subcontractor that needs to have everything just right in CAD, or is it something like these pieces that it's just in-house and I can play with my design process and not be on the computer? Staying away from technology is one of my biggest goals in life as well. So manipulating physical material is a big part. And then I feel like the figurative pieces, I'm at a great advantage because a lot of the forms are taken from castings of myself. I can literally just kind of stand in front of the mirror in the shop and kind of measure myself out and start cutting and welding in for structures and then start going.
That is incredible. Being able to use yourself as a form makes it easier for yourself, but what problems does that also face? What difficulties do you have with using yourself as a reference, as a model, instead of having a separate form that you're able to use?
It is my hope that students are able to very, very quickly get past the I'm naked, I'm on display. I know first year figure drawing, first year portraiture, we're supposed to do like 50 drawings of ourselves in front of the mirror, all these different sides. And I feel like a lot of these, what do I want to say, the things that we have to do in art school is to break down that barrier and be as free, naked, vulnerable, accessible to the audience as absolutely possible. I am grateful for that experience and for breaking down that barrier, and then being able to express that authenticity that 9 times out of 10, this is my form. Because really, I only know life through myself, my view, my perspective, my body, and all of that is connected.
That is huge. That is so insightful and relates to all of us, but especially students right now working through identity, working through the human form. Absolutely fantastic. I'm going to bounce back really quick. You mentioned chakras. Do you play with that idea a lot in your work?
I do. I have an aversion to westernized medicine. I really do feel that our health is dependent upon our emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual self. And a large part of that is that we're one body, our 7 chakras, paying attention to the movement of energy, that everything is flowing. And in this show, I'm really depicting or sitting with myself westernized medicine and pulling apart the body, focusing on only one body part or one systematic change, not relating certain stressors in one area of the body to something else. And this all really does stem from the fact that this past year, my sister and my mother both were diagnosed with breast cancer and went through westernized medicine treatments for that. And then seemed to get on this kind of cog, like they were on this wheel of, pumping the chemicals and doing all this rehabilitation and these surgeries, and then they're in remission, and then, well, maybe this surgery, and then maybe there's this issue that should be looked at. And a lot of, if I have a hammer and you ask me my opinion, I probably want to tear it down. Well, if, you ask a surgeon anything, they want to cut it out. It just seemed to really be this corporate machine that could not be shut down. And so this whole idea of pulling the chakras out of your body, which of course in meditation and physical, spiritual self-alignment, we're looking at keeping them all very centered. But in the other room, all the chakras have actually been pulled out of the body, and she's sitting not in meditation and not in prayer, but just with herself, examining how her body and self are functioning.
That is beautiful. That is absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing such personal and difficult struggles you've gone through to experience this point, to be able to consider medical practices and how we handle ourselves and our health. That is beautiful. Now I feel horrible because my next question was going to ask you about more works in the back. You have these beautiful models up on pedestals that seem very different than your other works. And I was curious if you could share a little bit about those with us.
Sure, they're very geometric. Each one of the sculptures back with the figure sitting with myself are representations of the 7 chakras. So the lotus flower being the 7th, and the rest geometric pieces being going down. The geometric pieces, I have been looking a lot with slide construction, icosahedrons, different shapes, polygons with different materials. I know we had discussed, Susan, the plexiglass.
Yes, I was just about to ask, why do you use plexiglass in your work?
And it's really a lot like these masks that they're finding in the oceans. Very soon, hopefully, God willing, we're going to be done with this pandemic. All this plexiglass is going to be pulled away from countertops everywhere. I believe as artists, it's part of our role in society to figure out how is this plexiglass going to be used. I do create large exterior sculpture, and some of those pieces are very, very similar to large, 25-foot park pieces. And I really want to explore how can the plexiglass be used for exterior installation in lieu of glass, what kind of metal housing or whatnot, but also how it can be used in model basis for large projects, and making the little maquettes with the plexiglass and saving resources like glass.
That is so smart. On that topic, you'd mentioned working with cardboard and working with more simple tools, simpler materials in exploring the basic levels of 3D studies. What are your thoughts on using these materials like plexiglass and cardboard? Are there other materials like that you would group in?
I feel like we are so much on the same line with this, that anything recycled, anything that we can pull out of a trash bin, we should be using. The cardboard, the plexiglass. I stay away from any kind of tin bottles or tin anything, because I really can't keep a flame light enough for that. But I'm really starting to look more into adhesives and nuts and bolts, rather than just tapes and slide construction, and of course welding things together. My go-to is I should be able to just tack weld anything together. Ever since the pandemic, we're going through this metal scarcity. Copper, I haven't been able to get copper we're going on 7 months.
Wow.
And the geographical location is a national hub. If I can't get it in the Midwest, guess what? They're not getting it on the coast. So that's another reason why we really do need to, instead of going out to the scrap pile and cutting things down and making a model real quick, try and stick to the cardboards, the papers, the recycled materials more, and viewing metal as more precious again.
That's beautiful, and really thinking about reserving materials and honoring those materials. It's a limited material, metal, wood, stone. These materials have one life and one use, and being able to reserve them for that. Whereas the cardboard or the plexiglass, it's already had its use, and now being able to give it a second use is recycling and absolutely gorgeous. Um, you mentioned copper is hard to come by here. So a lot of these works being in stainless steel?
That is why I did use more stainless than normal. And the copper that is in this show, I was going out to my scrap piles and just scavenging every single tiny little piece, which again was very good for me. We have been spoiled for so long. I have been spoiled for so long. Being able to work in this hub basis, I've been here about 3 years at my current studio. And the amount of scrap semi-precious material that I have was wonderful. I was able to finish out this show, and I feel very, very blessed by that. But yeah, I think we're all feeling the scarcity across the board, from housing to fuel to everything is in a bit of a scarcity. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Working with, you enjoy copper a lot. I get the feeling. What's the difference with working with copper versus stainless steel? Why do you prefer one over the other? Are there other materials that you enjoy working with?
copper is very clean. There's not a lot of fillers in the mining process, and then in the foundry, there's selenium, cadmium, some fillers that at high exposure would be toxic, but it's not a toxic metal. I feel it's a healing metal. They love to feel it and work with it. Stainless steel, very, very clean. The debris, though, it's very unhealthy for esophagus, respiratory. The grinding down of stainless is definitely the filters for the respirators need to be something that is for stainless steel. Mild steel is dirty. I think it is just dirty. It is the best way to get poisoning, to get metal poisoning, I feel.
Wow.
And women in this field need to be very, very careful with that. Whenever I teach in sculpture class, I have 17 pages of material on the diseases that one can get from working with metals and the gases like this. And women are 30% more likely to get sick from it because when we go through puberty, our bodies have a higher fat percentage than men, and so we hold on to toxins more likely than men do. So mild steel is a great way to get a metal toxicity, metal poisoning, but there are lots of supplemental ways to get over that. That's also no reason to run to the doctor. Something to be very aware of, and diet and health, and watching our bodies and how we're performing and staying on top of it.
That is something that I don't think I'm alone here with saying that I would have never thought about health and safety when working with metals. My big concern is don't burn my hand, don't cut myself, but the idea that your body can leach in these hard metals. Are there any metals that you specifically would not work with?
Oh, a ton. Yeah, aluminum. You know the kid on YouTube that's like pouring aluminum down into anthills or whatever?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, he should not be inhaling that. Yeah, anything with tin, antique coppers has too much tin in it. Please don't melt it down. Don't mess with it. Um, uh, yeah, anything kind of brass, bronze is along the same lines as copper. I want to say it's like a soothing. It's a take care of you metal. Um,
So brass, bronze, copper, beautiful materials. They showcase gorgeous in here. But how about outside? Are your works, some of your works or any of your works designed to be outside in the weather?
yes, I do have public installations as well as exterior pieces and private and corporate collections.
Does your process change at all for working with pieces that are designed to be outside and see weather and wear and tear versus ones that would be inside and kept away from sunlight, snow, and rain?
Absolutely. We have zones in the United States. Most of my installations are in the U.S. And so designing the sculpture itself, the anchoring pad, everything is dependent upon its zone. So that would be annual footage of snow, the weight of that snow, um, mile per hour winds. There's a lot of things to really take into account there, and the materials are truly dependent upon how many seasons the client is going to get in that region, and what their individual needs are for their weathering. And material is really based upon that too. No matter what the exterior, I want to say like coating, because I use metal coatings, like copper, brass, bronze. So a person isn't paying for a full bronze statue where the foundry prices would be astronomical. I'll build their piece out of steel or mild steel, a much less expensive material, but then use a suspended metal bronze finish on top. So it'll patina, it'll age, it'll last like bronze does. But in certain geographic locations, I'll use a stainless steel underneath that won't rust and it won't age. It has a rigidity that's harder than mild steel, especially a beach location or somewhere that's going to oxidize quickly. And then mild steel in more of a kind of area like Arizona, where things are not going to age so much on the interior side. It's going to be the finish that is the main problem, and heat absorption, things of that nature.
That is crazy. I would have never thought about different areas for different wear outside of, I'm just thinking here, we have Midwest, you have hot, hot, and you have cold, cold, cold. So being able to be prepared for that, but also out towards the coast and away, that's brilliant. Working with this, you mentioned you have most of your installations are in the States, but not all. Where all do you have installations at?
UK, I have one that's out there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Other than that, I'm pretty much US based.
Where do you have around the US? I know that you have one coming up in Council Bluffs, correct?
Correct. I have several galleries that represent me from LA to Charleston, South Carolina, Texas, and some other in there. And what's great about the galleries that rep me is that they work around the world. So a lot of especially my exterior works or corporate works, I have that representation. That administrative side of the business is all handled by the gallery. Really, all I get to do is build and meet our predetermined, agreed upon deadlines.
That sounds really convenient.
It is. During this post-COVID time, though, a lot of galleries have shut down. So this whole past year, a big part of my job was learning the administrative side, sitting down with my lawyer, building contracts, and client questionnaires, and really being able to develop the business side where I work with patrons one-on-one. And I've taken all of that knowledge and actually built a syllabus. And I'll start teaching online little workshops for other emerging or professional artists that need some help in that administrative development side.
That is brilliant, and that is so important. Being able to know how to market yourself, being able to know how to reach your audience and how to connect with them. That is amazing. Do you do a lot of workshops?
No, I really don't. No. But this it became a necessity in our post-pandemic world of me learning how to represent myself, have my own contracts, and I have heard from so many other artists that they have the same needs. Well, why are we all hiring our own attorneys? Why are we all going through this separately, incurring the same expenses? To me, it made so much more sense to go out into my communities and offer these materials and set up, online forums where we can actually discuss our difficulties that we're having with patrons and try to troubleshoot and help each other. How do we deal with this? I mean, if we no longer have a gallery to represent us, and that person sitting in the seat telling us, okay, this is how we should deal with it, then maybe we can caucus and come together and figure it out.
That is so giving and sharing and just being able to build a beautiful community together. That is absolutely amazing. If you were to give advice to current, upcoming, and emerging artists, what would you give them as far as business practices go?
Oh, wow. Business practices. My best advice for business is to try to figure out your strengths and your weaknesses quickly. Do you want to be building and designing? Do you want to be doing the finances and the CPA type things? Do you want to be working with clients and just design it and have somebody else fabricate it? Me personally, I love fabricating. I love designing. So I have a CPA, I have a bookkeeper, I have, I have different people to do the things I don't want to do. But what I want you to do is figure out what part of that job you love and keep that and hire other people to do the rest.
That's smart. Being your own boss is challenging because you have to tell yourself what to do, but also what not to do, and being able to manage that finite amount of time that you have. That's smart. I don't think many of us want to be our own CPAs and accountants and doing all of that.
It causes a lot of internal arguments, right?
A lot of disagreements about our trips to Target.
I thought my scheduler was me.
Your accountant is even worse.
Probably not.
That fantastic advice. I know that you had mentioned being represented at galleries across the U.S. You're also represented here in Nebraska as well, correct?
I am.
I know that you're up at Omaha.
Yes, Anderson O'Brien represents corporate installations for me. I do have a studio space at the Huff Arts, Culture, and Family Center in Council Bluffs. That's a brand new facility. I have a couple other galleries in Nebraska that represent me, but the main ones are Revealed Art Gallery in Charleston, South Carolina, Saatchi in LA, and then Eaton Fine Art Gallery in Texas.
That is beautiful. Oh my goodness, hitting all the main points. That's smart, that's brilliant.
And I have wonderful people within each of those galleries who are just lovely to work with, understand sculpture placement, will send designers to someone's space. and are able to communicate really great between myself and the patron. So I'm never asked to be on site or
That's
have to do
beautiful.
designing, right?
With having your work across the country in multiple galleries, being able to have artists, directors who can see your work and understand how to represent you best. Advice to new and emerging artists with gallery representation?
You are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
Do your homework, go in there with your questions, understand how you want to be represented. Exclusivity contracts are out. That's something in the past. If somebody wants that, then you don't need them. I'm being as real as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And if a gallery owner doesn't want you to be online and have any online sales points, you don't need them either. We're at a real crossroads between old school and the Amazon world. And that is one major breakdown that's going to keep artists down and the galleries down too. No one's going to hear about you if you're only in a physical space, and then no one's going to buy from the gallery. So those are my two. Just walk out the door.
Bold, brave, beautiful. How do you handle online, virtual? Do you have a lot of virtual information? Your site, do you have more of a digital platform?
Me personally, I use my site, which is my name, SusanWoodford.com, as an online portfolio so that I'm not in competition with the galleries that represent me, mainly because they are my administrative business side, and I want people to go through them. I love their support, and I need it. I do have some online galleries that represent me, and then I do have a personal little account that when patrons want something small and it's really not going to do anything but take time away from gallery owners, then I direct them to a little Etsy, I want to say landing spot.
Beautiful, smart, very nice. That is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of this information and just your gorgeous collection with us.
Oh, thank
This
you.
is absolutely beautiful. At this point, I think I lost one of my students, but do we have any questions? We've been chewing your ear off since you first got here. It has been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Susan. I appreciate it.